How's everybody doing today?
Good.
My topic today is to persuade y'all on free college tuition. The specific purpose of this is to persuade my audience why free college education is such an important thing, especially going into our future in our economy right now. I'll be telling you ways that we can do this and ways to make this possible in order to have a better future. The relevance of this is my audience and I are all attending college right now and all pay tuition. Credibility, I think I'm credible because I'm in college and I have to pay the tuition. College tuition should be covered by the government. There are many ways that this should be made possible. There's many sources and stuff that Bernie Sanders, this was one of his main campaigns, is how he could make college education free and our government would pay for it by tax increases and things that we could make legal like marijuana and tax that to go towards our free education. There's a lot of people in our country right now that can't afford tuition, and that puts them in a bad spot, and they could really help our country later in their lives. I think giving free college education gives everybody equal opportunity, regardless if you're rich or poor. Some of the smartest people can't afford college, and that's not fair to them. And there's some people that don't have the motivation to go to college, and they're the ones that can't afford it. And it's pretty unfortunate to see. One of the biggest arguments is how we would pay for this. In Colorado and other states in the United States, they have legalized marijuana for medical and recreational use, and they've made millions and millions of dollars on this. That's one of the few ways that we could pay for this. In other countries, they have higher taxes, and those taxes pay for the college education. As long as other ways that we could do this. Bernie Sanders was the biggest candidate to have this on his agenda this year, and there's some things I agreed with him, and that was the main one. Say college tuition in today's society is very expensive. There are many Americans that struggle for years after graduation of college to pay off their student loans and debts. Some things that I found in the book called Paying the Price is college is one of the most expensive things we'll pay for in our lifetime. I don't think you should be worried about having to pay for college right after you graduate. You should be more worried about things like starting a family, getting a good job, buying a house. An Edward Jones poll says that 83% of Americans can afford college tuition, and that's a really high number. I think that the government, another way we can pay for this is the government to spend more money on education and less money on things like military and like public transportation stuff and stuff like that. It is estimated that the government spends close to $4 billion on military every year, and we could cut some of that and use it more towards college tuition. People who already have a lower income are already at a disadvantage. They're the ones that should have the funding, the government funding first, and then work our way up the ladder. One of the expectations that should be met, though, if you want the free funding for college education, should be a minimum GPA. I think a 3.0 would be a pretty fair GPA to maintain. This just shows that you're dedicated and are motivated enough to keep your grades up and get your degree in a certain time frame. Now that I've given you some of the ways that we can make free college tuition possible, I'm going to talk about the average amount of debt that students are in after college. According to tychus.org, an average student is more than $30,000 in debt after leaving college. Most students don't have enough money to get through college without taking loans out, so almost everybody deals with this issue. On average, it takes college students more than 25 years to pay off their tuition loans. When exiting college, I think the students should be more worried about starting their careers and not having to pay off debts. On average, the loans are just under 7%, or the interest rates, which doesn't seem very high, but if you keep adding that up over 20 years, the numbers really start to get pretty high. Some better alternatives, I think, to going to four-year universities or junior colleges. It's a cheaper way to get started and kind of transition into four-year universities because people don't realize how much of a workload college is, especially playing sports. It gets pretty tough. I also think junior college gives students an opportunity to raise their GPA and get the scholarships to the four-year universities. Also, some kids can't get into four-year universities due to their ACT and SAT scores, and this gives them a chance to get their grades up. Now that I've told you about some cheaper alternatives and how unfair student loans are, I'll talk some about the places that have already implemented free tuition and how they make it work. New York is the first state in the United States to implement free college education. I think that's a really good thing. There's also other countries. The Netherlands is one of them that has free college tuition. The way they do that is they have really high taxes that pay for that, as well as their health care. Almost every student has a time in their college lives where they become lazy and don't worry about deadlines and having a mandatory GPA. And I think the free college education, the loans and stuff that you receive would be a good motivation to not deal with that. In the end, I think college is one of the most expensive things we'll pay for in our lives. Eliminating this cost would allow us to be more successful and spend more money on important things. I've told you how we can adopt free college tuition by raising taxes and using our money more wisely, as well as legalizing some things that could make us money. Other countries have already adopted this policy, have been successful with it. I think mandatory GPAs would help show who actually deserves free college tuition and government funding for that. I've also talked about community college and how good of an alternative it is to four-year universities because it is less expensive and it is a good transition from high school. Hopefully I've helped persuade you guys today on how free college tuition is a good thing and how it can help our society in the future. Some of those kids that can't afford college could be our next presidents or help us find a cure for cancer, some other diseases like that. Thanks for listening.